Yeah. Yeah.
preface, in her preface of the book, which is like an intro. She talks about she gives her dedications of who she dedicates the book and who she dedicates the book to, and who was a part of her life during the process of writing the book. And I really appreciate how she talks about the relationships in her life, not just her immediate family. She talks about other people that were in her life and what part they play. And I think that it's important that you acknowledge and recognize the reason why people are in your life, whether if it's for short term or long term. It may have ended bad, but it wasn't all bad. But it's always a reason and a purpose. And then there's some people that was in your life and it was always good. So it's good that I like how she recognized the different relationships that she had, and even how she lost her brother in the process of doing this project, Divine, and he helped her with that process. So I like how she talked about, just the journey, because a lot of times we get to the victory and then we talk to people about our victory, but they don't know the challenges and the different things that you had to go through to get there. Because some people, they think, oh, I could just do a hop, skip, and a jump, but they don't know the behind the scenes. So I like how she kind of talked about that. And then also she talked about how her book was dedicated to a lady in the Bible called Mary Magdalene. So Mary Magdalene is a woman that the Bible speaks of that had a lot of issues. She had a lot of issues. So a Christian would say she was possessed with a lot of demons. But basically she just had a lot of issues. And a lot of her issues were things like, we can go on and on. You can say abuse. We could say she abused. I'm not saying she abused drugs, but I'm saying like the issues that the community, that a lot of us face, that a lot of people in society face: drug abuse, physical abuse, prostitution. Just different issues, like issues on that level, is what she has, what Mary Magdalene faced. And it was many issues, that it was so much that they said that she had an issue of blood, which means that it was like a woman when she's on her menstruation, when she's on her cycle, and it's like a time where she feels unclean. And so that's a sign of, like, Mary Magdalene, she had so many issues, she felt unclean. She didn't feel like a whole, she didn't feel whole. And so the author, she dedicated this book to Mary Magdalene because of her own personal life journey of what the person that she's writing about in the book, personal life journey of dealing with all kind of issues of life, and how, she used those same issues as her testimony to help other women. And a lot of them had to do with abuse. And whenever someone goes through abuse, it's usually like full circle. They might go through one abuse to another abusive situation, to another abusive situation, to another abusive situation, even to the point where you become abusive to yourself and become suicidal and everything else. So the author dedicated this book to the story of Mary Magdalene as a mirror to a modern day Mary, meaning that
very well said.
Yeah, the Bible speaks of Mary Magdalene and her struggles with life, but we all have that same struggle. Maybe it looks a little different, but some of them are similar. And in the story, there's a Mary in the story, and she mimics and she resembles the life of Mary Magdalene and how she uses it and turns her ashes into beauty in the story and help other people. So, yeah.
So I just wanted to add.
Did you have anything you want to say to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add. So just to finish what Vicky was saying. So Karen Kingsbury books are all fictional. I'll take that back. Majority of her books are fictional. She has a few that are nonfiction, but majority of them were fictional. And as I've been going in this journey with Karen Kingsbury, I did not know until recently that before she started writing these books, she did like short story science fiction for teenagers. So I'm like, wow. But I was doing some research. Karen Kingsbury has written or co-written almost 100 novels or short stories, and as of 2008 has nearly 13 million copies of her novels in print. So some of her books have turned into movies, and I have had the pleasure of watching them. So I would really suggest that you go check out her books. They're worth reading. They have definitely changed my life. So with this book, Divine, going into just a little synopsis of the first chapter, the main character, like Vicky was saying, is a modern-day parable of Mary Magdalene in the Bible. So our character's name is Mary Mason. And what caught my attention, it was like the first two sentences, because she's advocating. So she was speaking my language. The book starts off with her advocating for her shelters, going to the Senate in Washington, D.C. to ask for continual money to help fund her shelters. In the book, it says she has 5 shelters. There could be from domestic violence, it could be from abuse. She even has teen shelters, anything in that whole dynamic. And she's speaking before the senators in Washington, D.C. to ask for continued funding for a program that she's having in one of her shelters, which is help me say it, Vicki?
Abstinence.
Yes. And she's talking to the senators, and, she goes to see them every 3 years to continue to ask for funding. And they got some people that hear her story every time she comes, and they might not agree. It says it in the book. We got some over there, because, why are you coming up in here? You mix a state and religion, state and what's that other one? Is it religion? I can't remember what it was. But in the book,
it's religion.
Okay.
They said state and church.
Huh?
They said state and church. That's how they named it.
Yes, because she's talking about abstinence, where encouraging teenagers not to have sex before marriage. So that can be for some people that can be a touchy kind of subject, So we got some listening, they don't want to hear that. However, because they have respect for her, and because of her story, because they know her story and what she went through and her testimony, and the fact that she was able to get through all of that and then go through school and end up having a PhD and then having shelters to help other people. So out of respect of her story, even if they don't agree, they're willing to listen. So she goes before the Senate, and she's advocating for another 2 years for the funding for her programs. And, she finishes her speech, and then she gets in a car, and she's on her way to her shelter.
Before you go on, DJ,
Yeah.
Can I mention something else she said in regards to the abstinence program? She also was able to prove how abstinence is a good thing for the youth.
Yes.
She was saying it can reduce cases of things like pregnancy and STDs, and also where a child, it builds their self-esteem, and it helps with their, choices in life. That some of the choices that they may make by being sexually active, they wouldn't make those choices because they have boundaries. They set boundaries. So she was like, not just when she spoke, she was also stating different, proven facts of how having the abstinence program benefited the community. And the community also recognized her for that. She could just be walking down the street and somebody will holler at her and give her love, So,
right.
Yeah. So you can go on, DJ.
And then, thank you. And then they were saying that about that piece where she was sharing and telling her testimony, or testifying, because she was testifying before the Senate. She was also sharing how most of the time, because I want to make sure I paraphrase it correctly, most of the time, the women that she would see that have come before or come to her shelter, let's say her shelter, because she didn't see them all the time. She had her staff see them. She was like the overseer, Most of the time, the women that came, or boys or men, I think she was talking about both, that came before her, let's say women right now, most of the time she stated in her testifying that the ones that went through abuse that come through her door, most of the time they were sexually active. So
at a young age.
I think that is at a young age. So I think that's a point that needs to be mentioned. And we're going to go through the book, and as we go through the book, you're going to hear her story. And it's even though it was fiction, it's a powerful story, because I feel confident that somebody reading this book or has read this book possibly went through the same thing she went through, even though it's fiction.
I remember.
Go ahead,
DJ Drika. I remember. I can't remember if it was her saying this out of her mouth, or if it was like someone that did a story on her. But they were saying how when she does that, it's like a lot of different stories. I mean, a lot of different people's experiences that she put together. So It's not that she's pulling these stories out of the sky. These are actual stories of people's lives, experiences that people have had that she, encountered in one way or another. Like she came in contact with these people. Yeah.
Right, and then and then she's given examples of people she's encountered, as well as sharing her own story. And the reason why we keep saying that is because the person that she's going to be speaking to eventually, like I said earlier, she doesn't always speak to the client. She allows her staff to handle that. But this particular client, she felt that this particular client needed to hear her story.
Can I say something, DJ Dika?
Yes.
We didn't mention the fact that she has several shelters. I think they gave a number, but
5.
Yeah, so she has 5 shelters. So it's not like she just has one shelter, and they're shelter for abused women.
Right, and then she has something for the teens, because remember the teenager saw her when she was driving and she was asking them how they was doing. Yeah, so she also has teen programs as well.
Yeah, and her programs are set up where they actually allow children as well, because the woman that you're getting ready to speak of had little children. Yes.
And even though we're talking about a fictional story, like I said, there's people that have a similar story. And I just want to highlight how, in general, everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. It might not be newsworthy, but it's a story. Our story is not our own. Our story to help someone else. So when you're going through something in your life, especially particularly it might be abuse, it might be suicide, many other things. Some people get through it and some people don't. So if you're able to get through it, count it all joy. And that once you get through it, that's your testimony, that's your story, how you can help someone else. I went through this. So this is I went through this. I know what you're talking about. And I can relate. So I can tell you my story. And then sometimes people don't believe you. They're like, yeah, right. You don't have a clue. You don't have a clue what I went through.